Hello, and welcome to the Conscious Communion podcast, where we traverse through the inner dwellings of the human experience through conversation. I'm your host, Danae. Join me as we explore the interconnection of creativity and community. Maggie is a somatic mentor and an embodiment guide focused on nervous system and body-based practices. Over years of training and personal practice, Maggie has created the Core Rising Method, a unique combination and flow of body-based techniques from the worlds of somatic healing, embodiment, yoga, and breath. These modalities all come together intentionally to work with the body's systems to satisfy the energy you feel to safely express. The Core Rising Method feeds Maggie's passion for connecting people to the wisdom of their bodies because she believes that this connection to self is the foundation to collective healing and a new path forward. Welcome, Maggie.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I found you on Instagram, and it's funny how these worlds of the interweb can connect us.
I
It's
know.
just so wild. But I really wanted to have you on because, as we were talking about before, this feeling of coming into the body is becoming ever present for so many of us.
Mm-hmm.
And anxiety and depression often shows up in the body. And I know that you had your own story of coming into your own awakening in 2012, and really coming to that wisdom was a process. So I would love for you to just share a little bit about that, because I think that the origin story of people's work is so vital to knowing that we can all set ourselves free.
Yeah.
So if you could share that a little bit, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. Yeah. And I love how you said that. Yeah. Kind of like coming into our own is really that key to, right, setting ourselves free to that liberation. And it absolutely is. I find that really just coming into your body is such a deep and profound way to know yourself and therefore trust yourself and therefore create that safety that I believe that we're really, really all craving and seeking. So yeah, thank you for the question. So let's go back. So I had kind of a tumultuous upbringing, we could say. Experienced, my fair share of childhood trauma. And at the time, of course, didn't have the resources or kind of co-regulation to support to really process what had happened. So that ended up manifesting when I was a teenager as an eating disorder. So kind of the trauma that I believe was really deeply held in my body, I then turned to trying to control my body and manipulate my body and look a certain way to receive that love and that recognition that I really wanted. So that kind of started, I would say, a line of, I guess we could call it like self-medicating, right? Through the eating disorders, through partying, right? Really numbing myself, really distracting myself, really feeling really anxious and very just confused and kind of out of sorts. While on the outside presenting like everything was totally fine, right? I, had friends, I did well in school, like everything tangibly seemed really fine. But on the inside, I was just like so confused and really sad. And I couldn't really make sense of it. So it just led to, all these behaviors that at the time I thought would help, but really didn't. So, right, like you mentioned, in 2012, that was actually when I graduated college, and I was living somewhat in the real world. I'm not sure how much in the real world you could be in your 20s, but at least for me. But yeah, so I had just graduated college. I was working and still going out every weekend, like partying a lot. And it just got to a point where I was just like tired of feeling like a mess. And like, I had this very kind of self-deprecating attitude, like, oh, it's so funny that I'm a mess. Like, haha, Maggie's so crazy. But no, like it really wasn't funny anymore. Right. And I was kind of sick of it. So it started actually, like the remnants of the eating disorder that had formed when I was 15 was still very much present in my early 20s. And so I think that that is actually what led me to first learning about nutrition and fitness, because I was so at a loss at how to serve my body that that was kind of like the gateway in. Like that was like kind of like the first thing that I saw would be that first step for me. So I started educating myself on nutrition, you know, kind of what to eat and when to really feel my best, right? I stopped kind of seeing food as a way to make me look a certain way and rather as a way to help me feel a certain way. So I learned about that. I learned about fitness, different kinds of workouts. And then that ultimately led me to practicing yoga, which of course just like started everything. I feel like yoga is the gateway for so many of us in this space. And it's really interesting looking back at it now. I'm not sure he even knows, but my teacher at the time teaches in a very somatic way, right? Very much mindful of kind of the nervous system's rhythms and very much in a way that just like unites that mind body experience. So I definitely kind of had a really strong foundation in somatics without even really knowing it. So I was practicing asana, right? The postures. This was also when I was introduced to different traditions in meditation and pranayama, breath work, right? Kriya, kind of all of these different techniques that have been around forever, and just really like immersed myself in the world of yoga. And at the time, I was having very strong reactions to the different types of practice that we were doing, to the movement, to the meditation, to the breath work. Like I would have like visceral reactions, right? Like there would be like certain meditations that would make my body start tremoring. There would be certain postures that I really couldn't do. My hips were like so tight, like, oh my God, like pigeon pose, like I would just cry like immediately. That was another thing too, like very frequent, like emotional outbursts when I was doing this physical practice. So that just kind of really got the wheels turning, right? I think I've always been a really curious person by nature. And I think I've always had this really deep desire to really understand myself and why I act the way I do, why I feel and think the way that I do. So that kind of curiosity was always there. And when I started having these really big reactions to practice, I think I just naturally got curious. So I took my teacher training. And at the time, I was working in politics in New York City, which was crazy. And my boss was actually up for reelection. So I was working on her campaign. It was crazy toxic, like just how you'd think of like politics, like lies, like people just spouting off lies. Like I would be like in the middle of the street, like arguing with people. And I'm like, who is this person standing in the middle of the street, like screaming at this stranger? Like I just felt so like unlike myself, but I was like just in this different world. And so I told myself if my boss, if she lost the election, that I would try to teach yoga full time. And she lost. So I did. And I started teaching in New York. And what ended up happening, so I kind of already had like this basis in like yoga, of course, right? The tradition of the practice, the anatomy of the body. And I took all of that really into my teachings. And when I started teaching full time, what actually ended up happening was I would be in the middle of a class and suddenly my voice would stop. Like I couldn't speak. And and my body would like lock up. Like I literally felt like I was frozen, but I wasn't understanding what was happening at the time. And then the same thing would kind of happen in conversations with anyone, right? With friends, with strangers. If someone even asked me my name, I noticed that it was always if someone asked me something about myself that I would freeze, right? Like I literally wouldn't be able to speak and it would take me a second to kind of like get a word out. And I was just like, what is happening here? Like, what is happening to me? because I'd never been like that. I'd always been like social and engaging and all the things. And I was really at a loss. And that is what kind of led me to realize that it was my nervous system, right? I was experiencing like a very raw experience of freeze. And I think, reflecting on that time, I was like, everyone was like, you're teaching yoga. Why are you so stressed? Like, why are you so freaked out? And I'm like, I don't know. But like reflecting on it now, it was really the first time in my life where it was just me. I was being looked at as, I guess, whatever you could consider some kind of like authority, right? You're a teacher in a space, holding space for students and guiding a class, which to me, since I cared so much about the practice, I think felt like such a big responsibility. And so it was just me. I had no boss telling me what to do. I had like no kind of like pre-laid out plan that I could follow. It was really just me making decisions for myself. And also at that time, I had a falling out with a friend group that had been my family since I was like a kid. My partner at the time, he and I we moved from New York. So I wasn't close to my family anymore. I wasn't really in my usual environment. So it was just kind of like this perfect storm that just continued to build. And what I realized was that all of these like very innate survival like things that we have, right? Like home, loved ones, finances, right? I was making no money. All of it, my nervous system like felt like I was just like being threatened from all sides. And I think that paired with a lot of the unresolved childhood trauma just made me like freak out. So yeah, that long story short, that led me to really learning about somatics and the nervous system. I got into somatic therapy. I got into body work. I'd always been very in touch with my body. Like I grew up like as a kid playing sports and, I was just always very kind of aware of my body. And I knew that I wanted to, I think I just felt very called to work with it. So yeah, I started somatic therapy. I started my own kind of like learning about the nervous system. I ended up in a coaching certification program and it all just kind of came together and evolved to where it is now. So yeah, it's been just like this really long journey of self-discovery, of learning about myself and sharing it. I really believe that is what I'm here to do. I believe that I'm here to really go through it first so I can kind of share those learnings with everyone else, because as you were saying, we're all really seeing the value and really coming into our bodies and really feeling how everything that we experience is really held within the body. And it's so beautiful to see this like shift in consciousness collectively. So yeah, I'm really, like, I don't know, even honored to like be a part of it. And yeah, so all that is kind of a long-winded way of explaining everything.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being vulnerable. And I think it's important for people to know that if they're in a place where they're feeling that freeze, that fight, that you don't have to continue living that way. Mm-hmm. I too very much went through that same process and I'm still very much integrating the body.
Yeah.
It's a process and it's an uncovering. And so much of it is really getting to the root of our self-expression, like you said. So I'm curious what that has been like for you, getting further and further into the body, and how that has helped you activate your voice and be more clear in your self-expression.
I love that question. Yeah, I feel like because especially lately, I am really, really feeling it. I feel like for a long time, I did all of the work by myself. Again, leaning on those modalities of movement, meditation, breath work, but always kind of doing something that was I guess you could consider it like pre-laid out, like a yoga sequence or a traditional breathwork practice or, you know, a guided meditation, what have you. But I think, and that was a necessary part of the process, right? Like really like kind of like getting my toe in the door with these different kinds of practices. And over time, through practice, allowing myself to be intuitively guided. So it started with more of like these structured practices and then kind of evolved into me guiding myself through the practices while still receiving support from therapists, coaches, friends, family, speaking my truth to people that I really feel safe with, discerning who I actually feel safe with. And then I think that that process has now evolved even further to making it more of like a solo self-healing practice to now allowing myself to feel safe in community. Because, you know, I think as trauma survivors, we are taught, like our body, like very viscerally feels like connection is not safe because at one point it was not. But I think restoring that safety in connection with other people is like such an explosive part of healing, right? It's like that next layer. I think it starts on your own and you can like kind of take that as far as you can take it. And then it expands out further into really being seen with the right people. So yeah, now that looks like, I was just at this really beautiful festival over the weekend where I was given the opportunity to really practice that. And it looked like really like dancing and moving my body in ways that like I had only done so like in the privacy of like my own home. I think like intuitive dance is like such a beautiful piece of expression. So taking that from like just like me with like the door closed and like my shutters closed and then doing it like outside with hundreds of other people, I think that is so, so powerful. Yeah. And I think too, just like by way of like this kind of body-based journey, if you will, like you come to know yourself so deeply that like expressing your truth starts to feel safe because you just know it to be true so much. So it's like if anyone challenges you in that truth, like it's okay because you know what's true for you. So it almost can't even shake you because you're regulated, you're in touch, you're aligned. So if someone comes at you with some kind of challenge, it's okay. It might be a little activating, but it's not going to stay forever. So it's really all just like a process. And I feel like there's so many like different elements to it, right? Like there's the practice, there's the mindset, there's the expression, and just how it all kind of comes together.
So layered.
Yeah, exactly.
So layered. Yeah, it's interesting. I think so many of us, it's happening on such a global scale. I think for so many folks, people are finding out what aligns with them, what doesn't align with them. And it's that same uncovering where it's like, okay, how can I stand in my truth? How can I be authentic to who I am without discrediting the next person?
Mm-hmm.
And it's no offense to someone else. It's just what works for you may not work for the next person, but it's okay.
Yeah.
That's how we learn from each other. We're all mirrors for each other.
Totally.
So it's just such a beautiful dance. And I am so ecstatic to hear that you were dancing and using your body in new ways and expressing that with, you know, in front of people. I think there's a layer there, right? I think you can feel super safe in your home when it's just you and you're just listening to whatever makes you want to boogie and you're getting into it. But I feel like that also threads into play.
Totally.
And play is so important for the creative process and for the body. So how do you get into that mode of play and creating through also creating the structure of the body-based intuition and like kind of like interweaving and marrying those two things? How do you do that for yourself?
Yeah. Oh, I love these questions. Yeah. So for me, my energy, I'll say, is very inconsistent. I'm a projector in human design, if you're familiar with that. So yeah, so I very much like dip up and down. But when I'm in flow, like I can go for a while and really crank out a lot of work. But if I wake up and my energy's feeling like really sticky, like I really have to honor that. So I think that that is step one, really being aware of where your energy is at and not forcing yourself to create when you're in that sticky place. And I think that so much of that like comes back to trusting your channel and really trusting your process, right? Like if it's not going to come through today, I can honor that and it'll probably come through tomorrow, like all on its own. So I think too, like really coming back to like the truth that I believe that like it's not about me. It's like, it's about the work, and however that wants to be expressed, like it's really not up to me. Like I'm here just as that, like as that conduit to really, to really honor it however it wants to come through. So I can kind of go in with like more of like the masculine mind of like, okay, like I need to get X, Y, and Z done today. So I can do this tomorrow. But if the energy isn't there, then anything that I'm going to create is probably not going to be great. Like, and it's probably not going to land with people. I see that all the time, right? Like say, like, just for example, like on social media, like if I force myself to like put up a post that I'm really not feeling, or like, well, I'm never really not feeling a post, but like if it's like, if I feel like I'm making myself do it, then I see the reflection of like, it doesn't really land with people. Whereas if I wake up, I get in my body, I'm doing my practice, I'm tapped in, and then something just comes through and I share that, it lands with people. There's such a difference to it. And for me, the foundation is always really the energy. So it starts there and then it goes into practice and prayer, right? And just like being connected and tapped in. And for me, a big piece too is my environment. So there's kind of like the internal environment, right? Really checking in there. And then I take it kind of a layer outside, noticing what kind of external environment would really serve me. And as a projector too, it's really important for me to be around energy. So like say I have a lot to do, say I need to do some like admin stuff or whatever it might be, like write some scripts or write some content. I'll always go out to like a coffee shop or even like outside and just like sit in the grass. So external environment is a really big one for me too. And I think also being really patient with myself. I have this tendency to really want to rush and go fast and also make myself work a lot. Like rest is still something that I am trying to be okay with. And so just being really patient with myself, and then it circles back into just like honoring that energy and honoring what is here for me at the time, which is tough and it's a practice. So yeah.
Sure is. I empathize with you there. I definitely struggle with that myself. It's the shadow of the masculine, and it's so interesting you just mentioning, you know, that you were very physical when you were a kid and playing sports, and that part of us is embodied as a child, and it's almost like it's counterintuitive to when we get into these modalities that allow us to actually find the ease.
Totally.
And it's so funny how that it's like the antithesis to actually what you're trying to create for yourself.
Totally. And it's so much of like that, like hustle and grind culture that is totally like ingrained into us too. And me feeling like if I do work at a slower pace, if I do honor my energy and be a little more fluid, that I'm not going to be as successful as I could be, you know? But I keep trying to find the proof that that is not true, and finding regulation within that proof so I can just like start to like really rewire a lot of those patterns, because that's definitely still like a sticky spot for me. Like sometimes I'm like, can everything just be this slow? Can I have this like level of grace for myself? Like, is this allowed? So yeah, finding the safety within that, I think is really big.
That's huge. That is huge. And I think so much of it is changing the paradigm, because I personally haven't landed there.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm figuring it out. I'm dancing with it. But it's a process, and just hearing or reading or having folks say that the universe is here, and once we actually just let go, it's really here for us. It's almost like what you were saying with the social media posts, and seeing that energetic flow comes through when it's coming from an authentic place.
Yep.
So finding the rhythm that is in essence with your nature and flow with your nature, then it's like, of course it's going to come back to you. It's just here. It's so hard to deprogram and decondition the mind.
It is. And like, I feel like, I love how you said, like, just like shifting the paradigm. I feel like we're coming into this place where, like, I think women especially, like, are really allowing that feminine flow, or anyone identifying, as more feminine, like really allowing that to lead them, and letting the energetic alignment be that foundation versus the hustle and grind of how things used to be. And like seeing other people kind of embodying that too, like helps me find a little bit more safety in it. Like, oh yes, like this is the direction that we're going in, and it is possible, and it is okay. Has been really beautiful and really expansive. Definitely still a process, but like it's there, right? It's happening. Things are shifting.
Totally. And you live in San Diego area, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So you live close to the water, which I think is super helpful, just being close to a big body of water that you have access to, and being restored and charged from this beautiful representation of flow itself, right?
Yeah.
So what a concept to be able to have that as your guide. How do you integrate your time with nature as being a part of your spiritual practice, and how you show up for yourself?
Yeah, I love that. And nature has become like such like a non-negotiable for me these days. Like my family's all back in New York, and I always said that I would move back, but like now, like even like physiologically, like I don't know if my body could handle it because just like, I mean, New York State is beautiful, but the city obviously is lacking in a little nature. Because now, I mean, I feel so fortunate to, wake up and go grab a coffee and walk down to the water and like take a few breaths, like looking over the horizon. Like that to me is like such a grounding part of my morning, and just like hearing the waves and seeing the people out there, and just really kind of like being a part of it. That's really important to me. Like seeing the water like at least once a day has become very, very important to me. And yeah, again, I feel so fortunate to be able to do so. So I really want to take advantage of it so I can really like embody that energy and hold it, and share it, because I know it's not so accessible to everyone. Lately also I've been doing like morning cold plunges in the water, which has been, it's like, it is so cold, but it's so good. And just to like be in the water and dunk my head and like, just like, like cleanse myself just in the morning. Like it feels so, so nice. So the water is definitely like a very necessary piece of my day to day. And if it's not possible, I'm always like that person just like walking around barefoot, or like taking off my jacket and letting the fresh air hit my skin. I'm always finding like little pockets of sunshine and just kind of like sticking my face into the sun and like taking a few breaths. And as I've come like deeper into nervous system work and into my own body, like I've really just noticed how important it is to really integrate that into my practice. So like when I'm staring at the sun, like I'm not just staring at the sun, like I'm literally trying to like absorb it into my body, like very intentionally, right? Like letting it really just like fill my nervous system too. And I think that kind of like co-connective experience, like really connecting yourself with the elements, is regulating in itself, of course. And going to continue to kind of allow me to like be that channel that I hope to be.
So good. That is so good. And I think What a beautiful representation also to reclaim the feminine essence, because I think that so much of what we're just feeling as a collective, everyone's tired.
Oh, I know.
People don't want to work for anyone else anymore. They want to work for themselves.
Yes.
And if they haven't figured that out yet, it's because they don't feel safe in their bodies, is my guess.
Yep. Absolutely.
So the work you're doing is like, that is it's activating in itself, because it's so against the grain of literally capitalism and all these foundations that we're trying to deconstruct.
Yeah. Thank you for that reflection. Sometimes I get really hard on myself for not I've worked so hard to like really like feel safe, and I do, but of course like it's always like an up and down journey, but like, yeah, feeling like not safe in doing this work, feeling not safe in doing the work in the way that I want to do it. Right. And I appreciate that reflection to like kind of like affirm that like it's not just me, but it's a collective kind of reaction to this shift in our culture. So yeah, that makes me feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, I think it's also important to note, why wouldn't you be feeling the duality from it because of what you're doing? That's activating to that energy.
Yeah.
That energy doesn't want, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The other energy to thrive. But it's about marrying the two.
Yes.
And how we can co-regulate and integrate these energies and interweave everything together.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And it's so interesting to like witness that duality, right? Because like there's parts of me that are grounded and resourced and like ready to go and ready to shift into this new paradigm. Then there's the other parts that are like, but wait, we can't do this. So, right, like you said, to just like witness both parts and not be like, I have to get rid of one or the other, but like they can both come forward with us.
So